There are fears that the supply chain will become compromised now that stronger border rules have come into effect in Queensland. Anyone crossing the border from New South Wales into the Sunshine State must have had at least one COVID vaccination. This new measure is causing problems for truck drivers, according to Simon O'Hara, head of Road Freight New South Wales. He wants transport workers given priority access to vaccines. The call comes as the road transport industry is pleading for the supply chains to remain open. The country's key transport bodies claim the industry is not being recognised as an essential service by the authorities. Whilst willing to comply with the rules to limit the spread of the virus, more needs to be done to keep the supply chains open. Here's what O'Hara has to say. Hi Simon, thank you for joining us here today. Just how impossible is the freight task becoming nowadays?
Look, it's becoming extremely difficult. The supply chain integrity is being pushed and pulled in a variety of ways. What we're seeing is truckies continually stepping up and doing their job. They're overperforming. And if I could just say to your audience that everything you've got on your table, all the food you're eating, that vaccine that hopefully you've got in your arm, the mask you wear in the supermarket and elsewhere, that's come to you because a truckie's brought it to the supermarket or the shops.
Definitely.
So in terms of what truckies have been doing, they've been outperforming their normal role in terms of pushing out the products, pushing the freight out to various states and territories. They've done a great job, and I'd just like to acknowledge that. While you and I get to sit here and have this conversation, there's a truckie that's done tremendous hours. He's had to go and get swabs stuck up his nose. We've got truckies waiting at the Queensland border to get across. We've got new rules and new regulations that are coming out, it almost seems every hour, and they're doing a tremendous job under considerable strain. So in terms of the stresses and strains from government and others in relation to freight, there's a lot. I've just mentioned two of them there. They've had to get tested, some of them every 3 days. They try to get vaccinated sometimes and they're turned away from vaccination centres and GP clinics because they are truckies. Some of them are treated like lepers. Some of them are waiting a day and a half at the border to get across because they haven't got their test results back from, for instance, Tarcutta and Taree. So you're seeing a real strain on truckies and the supply chain, but they're still performing, they're still stepping up, they're still fronting up, and they're still pushing that envelope. And I've got nothing but respect for them. And your viewers, if they get an opportunity, should silently thank truckies for all the work they're doing because it's essential. And so the problem we're seeing is that there's a lot of new regulations coming out almost every couple of hours, certainly daily, certainly weekly. And, you know, we've got guys and girls on the road whose main job is to drive a truck from X to Y. And some of them are struggling, I'll be honest with you. I struggle. And I've got a background in law. I struggle with all of the different things that come out all the time. It's really difficult for people. So when we see greater requirements, which we're slowly seeing at the Queensland border for residents and border residents in relation to getting the first jab, that compounds an already difficult situation. And the last thing we want to see is the supply chain tested to an extent that starts causing guys like me to start worrying.
So priority vaccinations for the freight industry, that's the top priority, isn't it?
It sure is, and since November last year at least, we've been calling for priority vaccination for truckies particularly, and the supply chain generally. What we've said is it's far too important for the supply chain to fail because we aren't vaccinated. And so from our perspective, for at least the last 9 months, going on 10 months, we've said, hey, look, let's prioritise freight to get the vax so that we can keep the food moving, the PPE moving, the vaccinations moving, so that we ensure that there is supply. And from our perspective, we're slowly seeing that at the southwestern LGAs, which is where we're seeing this week a priority for authorised workers. Now, authorised workers are a large grouping, but it includes truckies and truck operators and freight. So that's a really important step forward, and so we're pleased to see that happen. But from our perspective, it also needs to move out beyond just the southwestern LGAs to the rest of the authorised workers, and specifically freight, to ensure that these guys and girls are vaccinated so they can keep doing their job. The last thing we want to see is truckies stopped at borders for days and days or not able to get across because they don't have the jab. So the issue here isn't the willingness for the freight industry to actually get the jab. The issue here is supply.
Simon, do you think that the industry is being recognised as an essential service by the authorities?
I think the Prime Minister has taken a good step forward insofar as acknowledging the great work that truckies have done. I think that's really important. I think that the New South Wales government recognises the basics of the supply chain in relation to the work that truckies do. I think overall the media certainly understands the role that truckies play, and it's great to see their engagement on this front. But I think when you get down to the nitty-gritty of things, I think we could do more to educate people about what truckies do and how they do it. And what I'd like to offer out there is for any politician or bureaucrat or any other business, if when we can, you'd like to take a trip in a truck, whether it be out to Port Botany or whether it be across the border, and when it's safe to do so, call me and we'll take a trip.
Yeah. Now, Simon, the country's key transport bodies are also calling for the government to keep the supply chain open. What else would you add to that?
I think this comes on the back of comments I made to the ABC about 2 days ago in relation to the mooted Queensland border changes that involve the one jab policy. I was reasonably quick off the mark there insofar as saying, look, this will compound supply chain integrity problems, and I stand by that, and so does New South Wales. I mean, the point here is that other states can say a range of things, but without New South Wales, the country doesn't move, it doesn't operate. So New South Wales is the indispensable state in terms of the Australian Federation. We need New South Wales to operate, and we need to do it effectively. And that's what I'm trying to do, and that's what the rest of us in New South Wales are trying to ensure, that New South Wales operates as that linchpin of the Australian economy, but also for freight. So I'm not sure what the other states are saying, but New South Wales, we're certainly pushing this as hard as we can.
Yeah. Now, Simon, service stations need to remain open so that drivers can have a rest, can take that break and sit and eat their lunch or their meals. What would you add to that?
Well, look, I think it's a basic human right, but we understand in the circumstances why that isn't happening for the general population. But for truckies who have done 10 hours or more in a truck, they need to use a service station and they need to do basic things, and they might need to grab a bite to eat. You can understand why. You can understand why a truckie who has crossed the Queensland border, come into the heart of New South Wales, and needs to stop and do some basic things such as use the toilet, get some food so that he can keep driving and keep doing the job. This is essential, and we need to recognise this. And we pushed hard in COVID the first time last year, where we said, look, this service stations need to stay open. And we're seeing some service stations at the moment that have chosen to shut when they don't need to. It's not against any regulations to ensure that truckies can't eat or can't use your facilities. What we need to do is ensure that they are open and that truckies can use those facilities, because it's basic. And I'll just make one point to customers who receive goods from truckies and our operators and from other customers. The point I'd make is this: if it's good enough for our guys and girls to make a delivery to your business to keep you operating, then it's good enough for you to let them use the toilets. And if you don't feel comfortable with that, then it's good enough for you to spend $25 a week getting a portaloo so that these guys and girls can use the toilet. This is basic stuff. It's not hard, it's not expensive, it's basic.
Some valid points there. Thank you so much, Simon. Really appreciate your insight again. Thanks for watching. Stay safe out there, and we'll see you next time.